Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Delacath, and we're going to talk about area right now. So I tried this once before and it was too long, so I'm going to try and speed it up a little bit. I'm not very good with my tablet or with my touchpad, so that's really my problem. So let me get rid of my picture. Okay, so when we measure area, we're measuring the number of squares inside of a two-dimensional object. And those squares are going to measure 1 centimeter on a side, or 1 inch on a side, or 1 yard on a side, or whatever measure we're using in that particular polygon, and or two-dimensional figure, because it could be a circle also. And basically we're just counting them. But instead of counting them literally, we're actually going to use formulas. So you are responsible for memorizing the formulas for finding the area of a rectangle, parallelogram, square, and triangle. Fortunately, they're all related to each other. And so let's see how we can go about figuring that out. Okay, so just a reminder that the area for all of these objects on this page, except for the triangle, is the area equals base times height, and I'm going to show you why I put the triangle on there to begin with. So for a rectangle, the base could be 10 meters, and the height could be 3 meters. And so to find the area, we're just going to multiply 10 times 3. And 10 times 3, of course, you know, is 30. And since we're doing area, it's going to be 30 square meters. And it's not like, there we go, 30 square meters. So that was easy. Okay, so moving on to the parallelogram, to the square, same formula, area equals base times height. And when you have those two letters next to each other, of course, it means multiplication. The difference here is that because all four sides of a square are the same length, then if we know the length of one side, let's just say it's 3 yards. Okay. Then to find the base times the height, we're essentially doing just 3 times 3, or 3 squared. That's why we call it squares. Okay. So 3 squared, that's why we call it squared. So 3 squared is 9. And again, we're measuring it in square yards, because we're counting the number of squares in there. So 9 square yards. Easy peasy. Okay. You notice that there are right angles for the base and the height for a rectangle and a square, but in a parallelogram, it's tilted. And so the height has to be perpendicular to the base. So you notice that little height thing there, it kind of makes an H with its right angle symbol. So that's the height right there. And let's say that the height is 4 meters. And the base, the base is 11 meters. And so to find the area, we just do base times height again. And base times height is 11 times 4, or 4 times 11. And 4 times 11, of course, is 44. And since it's meters, we're using square meters, because again, even though it's a tilted object, we're still counting the number of little squares on the inside. Okay, now, here's the little tricky part. The triangle isn't the same formula as those, because essentially, a triangle is part of a parallelogram. And you notice, you can pretend anyway, that the white triangle is the same size as the red triangle. And so basically all I have to do is find the area of this parallelogram and cut it in half. So the formula for a triangle, as it says on the page before, is to take the base times the height and then divide it by 2. Or you could also say 1/2 times the base times the height, which is going to give you the same answer. Okay, so in this case, let's say for this triangle, the height is 9 yards, and the base is 3 yards. My yards isn't going to fit, so just pretend that it's there. Okay, so we're going to substitute those numbers in there. The base is 3, the height is 9, and we have to divide that by 2. So 9 times 3 is 27. 27 divided by 2 is 13.5. So we're going to, or 13.5, I don't care how you write it. So 13.5 square yards. And there you go. You just found the area of a triangle. Okay, let's move on to the area of a trapezoid. So a trapezoid has a different formula. It's got kind of a complicated formula, so I'm not going to require you to memorize this one. But you need to know what the pieces of the trapezoid, what the formula means. So let's talk about that. So once again, let me put it in a different color. The height is a segment that's perpendicular to both bases this time. So it forms a right angle up here, and it forms a right angle down here. So that's the height. Okay, it looks like an H, so I'm not going to write it in there. And the two bases are B1 and B2, and it doesn't matter which one is which. I mean, obviously one's going to be shorter than the other, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to add their lengths together anyway. Okay, so now we know what they are. Let's put some numbers in there, okay? So let's say that the height is 4 meters, okay? And let's say that B1 is 8 meters. Oops. Well, that's pretty bad, but okay. And the base 2 is 12 meters. Okay, so what this formula says you have to do is you have to multiply 1/2 times the height, which we decided was 4. And so since I'm multiplying by a fraction, I'm going to put it over 1. And then I'm going to add these two bases together. So 8 plus 12 is 20. And put that over 1. And then I'm going to use my canceling skills that I learned or that I reviewed in the fractions unit. So I can divide 2 into itself and I get 1. And I divide 2 into 4 or 2 into 20 and I get 2. I multiply 1 times 2 times 20 and I get 40 over 1, which then is just going to give me 40. And of course my label is square meters. And then we have the area of a trapezoid. Okay, so let's move on to the circle. So we're still counting squares, but a circle is curved, so you don't have any side lengths to use. So the only straight thing in a circle that we have would be a radius or a diameter. So instead of using the diameter and making the formula complicated, somebody decided, I didn't decide, somebody found out that to find the area of a circle, you multiply this number pi, which is approximated as either 3.14 or 22/7, and we're going to use both of them. It could also be a much longer decimal. It's actually a non-terminating decimal, meaning it goes on forever, but we're just going to use one of these two approximations for this. Anyway, we're going to multiply whatever value of pi we're using times the radius squared. So, of course, order of operations always says we're going to square the radius first, and then we're going to multiply it by pi, whatever version of pi we're going to use. So let's go to the next slide. And in this purplish circle, we have a radius drawn right there. Remember, the radius goes from the center to the edge of the circle. So let's just say the radius is 10. Okay? And let's make it centimeters. I haven't used centimeters yet. Okay. So the formula says area equals pi r squared, and we're going to use 3.14 for pi this time. Okay, so pi is going to be 3.14. If the radius is 10, we're going to do 10 squared. 10 squared is 100, so we're going to multiply 3.14 times 100. And when you multiply something by 100, all you have to do is move the decimal point over 2 places to the right. So we'll go ahead and do that. So if we move the decimal point 2 places to the right, you end up with 314 square centimeters. Easy schmeezy. Okay, so now we're going to look at the second picture, and of course I'm sure you've already noticed that there's a difference between the first picture and the second picture, because in the second picture we have not a radius anymore, we have a diameter. And the diameter goes all the way across the circle, and it takes 2 radii, because here's the center approximately, and so this part right here is a radius, this part right here is a radius. So if the whole thing is the diameter, and the diameter equals, let's say, 14 meters, that means that the radius is only half of that. So we're concluding that the radius is 14 divided by 2, or 7 meters. Okay, so we're going to use the same formula, pi r squared. Area equals pi r squared. This time for pi, we're going to use the fraction version because you need to know how to use both. So I'll show you an example of that. So this time pi is going to be represented as 22/7. And the radius is 7, so we're going to square that. So that means now we're doing 22/7 times 49 over 1, since we're multiplying by a fraction. And we can do our wonderful canceling that we learned. And so the 7 turns into a 1. The 7 divided by 7 is 1. 49 divided by 7 is 7. And 7 times 22 is 154. And since we're counting squares again, when we're counting area, it's 154 square meters. And that's all there is to it. Good luck!